in my gum.
It's in my car.
throughout the
So
meeting.
not to worry about it.
All right, seeing that it is 6:59 PM, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order with a reminder to silence your electronic devices. Also, we will be doing a video and audio recording of this meeting. Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Paul Alexander,
Here.
Ms. Stacy Cyberling,
Here.
Ms. Ellen Slobodnik,
Here.
Dr. Shantae Jones,
Here.
Ms. Rachel Kirkland.
Here.
Madam Chair, all are present.
Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and lead the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I believe we have a correction to the agenda.
Motion to remove personnel from the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Should we say where we're going to move it to?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. If there's going to be a removal, I'm assuming that you want to discuss it under consent, which we are going to close for that matter. So that would require a motion out of consent. So that would be 11B.
Yes, you're going to make a motion out of
Yes.
closed meeting.
So the motion is to relocate
2A.
2A to 11B. Or 2A, yeah, 2A to 11.
Motion to move 2A to 11B.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries. All right. Moving on to what's left of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion on the rest of the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. All right. Ms. Williams, do we have anyone signed up to speak at public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, we're good. All right, seeing no one signed up for public comments. Ongoing business. Superintendent's proposed fiscal year '24 budget.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm here this evening to re-share, I guess, the superintendent's proposed budget for FY24. This is an action item tonight.
Microphone.
Try that again.
Okay.
Again, I'm here to present the superintendent's FY24 proposed budget. This is our second presentation. We won't go slide by slide this time, but I do want to do some highlights. And Mr. Lyon is also here to share a few additions. This is an action item for this evening, and so I'm pleased to present that for you. The first few slides are still the same, our strategic goals and our areas of focus. I want to share with you, again, the budget priorities for the FY24 budget have been student achievement, literacy, academic intervention, and curriculum alignment, compensation, sustainability and future planning, as well as a recognition of our city's investment in the school security upgrades that will be happening over the next 6 to 12 months and across the school division. So while those are not in our budget, we do recognize that the city has invested quite a bit into that. We've shared our budget development process before, and I want to just take a minute to kind of remind the board about the error that the state budget calculation tool was something that we had to deal with early on. To date, while there is some conversation about adjustments in the state budget for both FY23 or for FY23, nothing has been solidified at this point. And FY24 still remains at a reduction of about $455,000. So I don't anticipate any significant changes to the state revenue. So we will continue to present the proposed budget as presented prior. We've discussed our compensation plan. I just want to take a few minutes to highlight some things that are in the FY24 budget. It does include the revised classified pay scale and revised managerial scale. It does include a step plus 1% scale adjustment for teachers, so an average of about 4.4%. It includes year 2 staffing for our high school health and medical sciences pathway. It includes some repurposed positions, 2 reading intervention assistants at the middle school, special education transition services teacher at the high school, a student assistance support specialist at MPE, and a contract adjustment for the pre-K supervisor to an assistant principal. Professional development allocations, some contract adjustments for division specialists, and then some recruitment and relocation bonuses. As I've shared before, there are some unfunded priorities. Not everything that we wanted is in this budget, so it's important to understand that if you were to look at additional funding that would come in for FY24, these are the items that I would recommend. The first is to create the additional 1% adjustment to the teacher scale, so that we would be closer to a 5% increase average. We talked a lot about evidence-based classroom solutions, EBCS, our contract for $355,000 that is now being paid for with ESSER funds, and that would be another opportunity for us to include that should additional funds come, and an additional pre-K classroom teacher and assistant. Again, these are the unfunded budget priorities, and certainly if additional funds were allocated to the school division, we would want to discuss where and how those would be expended. So I did want to take a moment, these are 2 new slides, and kind of talk a little bit. There was quite a bit of discussion that I had with the board as well as some of our community about what happens if EBCS is not part of our school. What kinds of resources and supports do we have in place, and what kinds of things are happening to support both the behavior and the teacher aspect of what needs to happen in schools. So I want to highlight a few things for you this evening, and while they are not exactly what EBCS is, they are also things that provide additional supports for our students and staff. We do have an SEL curriculum that is in our K-8 building. Our EBCS training and materials will continue to be utilized and built out for the capacity and efficacy. We do have the new additional administrative position at Manassas Park Elementary School. That is a student assistance program specialist, a student support specialist. So as we work with the principal, with Mrs. Mammon, we can really tailor that position to meet those specific needs in that grade 3 through 5 school. Cougar and the middle school each have 1 additional assistant principal based on SOQ funds and what we are funded for the state. We are 1 assistant principal over for each of those. We have included this year school safety officers in our secondary campuses, and again our school resource officers across the division. We continue to wait for our high school one to join us, but I do know that will happen within the year. I also want to highlight, a lot of our work that goes on in our school, direct services that happen in our schools, come from our counseling team. We have an amazing counseling team across the division, and so it's important to recognize that the state provides a certain amount of funding for school counselors, and anything above that is we are funding with local funds. So by SOQs, we are required to have 10 counselors across the school division, and I'm proud to say that we have 15 counselors across the school division to provide direct services to our students. You can see the breakdown of what is required and how many are assigned to each of the buildings there on the slide. And I just, I'd take a minute to say that we have worked very hard to allow our counselors to provide those direct services to students. We've done a lot of work to take that school testing responsibility, not all of it, but the designee responsibility for school testing away from the counselors and put that in other places in the schools so that our counselors can really provide that direct service. That doesn't mean that they're not involved in school testing. Nearly everyone in the school is involved, but they are not the designated school testing coordinator. And so this is a good place for us to be really proud of the direct services that we provide to our students. And again, our counselors do an amazing job each and every day working with the social emotional, the academic, the career, the technical, all of those types of things that our counselors do on a regular basis. So I wanted to share those items with the board. And at this point, I'm going to let Mr. Lyon kind of come back and provide some overview of the data slides. And at the end of the presentation, the board members had submitted questions, and we provided some answers in that Google Doc. So Mr. Lyon's going to kind of go through each of those questions and answers so that we have a review of those. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Saunders. Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. Thank you for another opportunity to discuss the budget. Before, I just want to go back to the 5-phase process and just highlight the amount of collaboration that we've done to build this budget from the very first phase through phase 4 that we're at now. And thank my team. We've had a lot of long, very thoughtful and difficult discussions and decisions to make as we built this budget. And also thank you to our budget holders at the school level and administrators. These aren't easy discussions as they build a budget to determine what takes priority. We talked about our projected enrollment. I'm hopeful that our ADN this March 31st is at least flat, if not positive growth. But of course, we won't know it's March 31st after that data is pulled. And that will determine our final funding for the remainder of this year and for next. We've gone over our per pupil funding here. One thing I'll just touch on, you'll see the total per pupil spending over the years went up very highly in 2022, 2023, and then you'll start to see it trend down because those pandemic funds are coming to an end by the end of next August. We talked about staffing last time. I'd like to bump down to we have the insurance rates, and I didn't have those the last time we spoke. Unfortunately, the rates did go up. They held flat last year for the Key Advantage health care plans. However, the Key Advantage health care plans, those premiums went up by an average about 8.2% this year, 8.2%, where Kaiser remained flat from last year to this year. So I'll get to the next slide here. So I break these down because the question at the end of the day is how much do we have to pay? How much do our employees have to pay? And so I try to break it down here. We have the Key Advantage plans. We have 4 of those, and then the HMO, which is the Kaiser. So as you look at the $250 comprehensive dental, last year was $99 for the employee, for a single employee. This coming year will be a $126 to $27 increase, which is a $13.50 increase per pay. And then I'm not going to read through all these for you, but you can see how the differences are in the per pay with the policies broken out at the top at the column headers. I took a look to try to see could I increase the employer contribution, but as you know, with the funding issues and the other priorities, I just couldn't squeeze any more money out at this time. But hopefully in the future, maybe we can do a little bit more. We do pay more than our required percentage on some of the plans. We have to pay 80% of the single employee policy, 80%, and that's $586. So we pay $586 of each monthly premium for a single employee. And that premium itself, the total is $712. So we cover 80% of it, and then they pick up the other 20%. Then on the other policies, we pick up another 20% on top of that to contribute toward each of those other policies that have dependents on them. And as you see on this slide, I wish I could make it bigger. There we go. The single employee plus one, we're required to cover 55% of that premium, and that's exactly where we're at. Then the family, for a single employee family policy, we're required to do 44%. We're at 52%, so we're above that. The same with a two-employee plus one dependent policy. Again, requirement is 55. We're at 69. And then the two-employee family policy, requirement's 50%. We're at 62. So we're still above those the minimums on those. And then at the bottom of that slide, I show you our current plan participation as of, I think, last month. That's where we're at. So you can see the breakout. Our heaviest policies are the Key Advantage 250 comprehensive and the Key Advantage 500 comprehensive for the single employees in total. Rolling down. These haven't changed since last time as far as the breakout of where the budget revenues come from. Again, 65% from the Commonwealth, about 27% from the city, and the remaining across federal and local sources. Again, our biggest fund is our general fund, 86% of our expenditures, and then the rest break out across our capital fund, which we're reinvigorating going forward, the school nutrition fund, and the federal fund. Classroom instruction expenditures account for 75% of the budget, and then the rest fall out among the other 5 categories. And you saw all of these our funds that we have here, and the whole general budget request for next year is $56 million, $56,033,075 for total expenditures. The 5-year forecast. Just to remind people, we have worked with Governor Motti to set up a budget stabilization line item in their budget. So any funds that we have unexpended at the end of the year are deposited onto this line item within our budget that we can use to stabilize our expenditures going forward as we anticipate the local composite index to decrease and increase our costs. Getting into the question and answer portion of the slides, I've taken the questions that were submitted and put them into the slide deck here. The very first one, has the state provided any updates on the calculation error? And Dr. Saunders has already addressed that. They have addressed some things for FY23, but it's not going to fix it. In FY24, absolutely not. 2024 estimates I touched on the per pupil one already. You'll see the trend downward. The decrease is due to the post-pandemic grant funding coming to an end. And it kind of hit on question number 3 there too. Same answer. Next question was about how when we placed new teachers on the new scale last year, some teachers were put into a no-loss position because their years and education and their current salary were way above the step I would have placed them on. And I'm proud to say, I didn't put it in this answer here, but I'm proud to say this coming year, we took them all off. With the 1% increase in the step, I was able to take all of them off. I only had 1 or 2 left, and we just put them where their salaries fell so they wouldn't be in no loss position anymore. But to answer this question, when transitioning our support employees and managerial employees to the new scales, first took a look at the current salary in FY23. Of course, to remind people that support personnel, we gave a minimum of 3% on the classified scale and then placed them on their step and then years. On the managerial scale, we did not do a minimum increase. We took their current salary from FY23, found the nearest step on the FY24 scale for managerial, and then looked at years to place them. The only exception to that was if we regraded the position, reclassified it, where we moved specialist to a coordinator. And so we took that, since that's a new reclassified position, we're going to start initially on step 1, take a look at their current salary, add, depending on how many grades they increased with the new regulation, if it was 2 grades, we did 10% on top of the current salary and then placed them on the nearest step. And then if they did have any years of experience that were directly related to the coordinator position, the coordinator or director position, then we'd give them credit for that. But if those years of experience were not at that coordinator or whatever position they're at in the new budget, then those years were not credited. But they were not put in a no-loss position. Next question is about the contract, the pay scale lengths. Last year, we did have some pay scales, I think a 212, and maybe one other. We only had one employee on, but we took care of those and changed it to the other, you bet. But for these pay scales, 200, 205, 210, and 220, we have several employees on these different scales, so they are the ones we're using. Next question is about the high school greeter position code. I didn't think we had one, but we currently do. It's in the position code of greeter. But this position is being reviewed as school security upgrades are implemented. Dr. Saunders touched on this already. Slide 10 referenced the 5 repurposed roles, but were any new roles identified and budgeted for in the FY24 budget in central office or schools? All of the repurposed new positions are at the school level. They're not at central office. How will expenses that we share at the city be handled down the road, especially when we're talking about the transportation consolidation vision for the city and the school system? We haven't gotten into those details yet, but I'm sure we'll be discussing them and determining how best to account for shared expenses and then how that revenue will be accounted for from us to them or however. I will tell you right now, things that, the school resource officers and so forth, they'll invoice us and then we pay them. I imagine it would be something like that. Question 9, contract adjustment to the pre-K supervisor to AP. Does that leave a void in the pre-K supervisor position? Was this person promoted to AP and now has the duty of an additional duty to a PK supervisor? The special education chair resigned in January of 23 at Cougar Elementary, and the principal brought this suggestion to upgrade the pre-K supervisor to assistant principal and let that position address both of those programs. The person that would be in that position has special ed background, training, and rolls right in it and is actually doing all of that right now. So we really, by upgrading the position, now we're actually paying her for all the responsibilities that she has. All right, and question 10. With getting rid of EBCS, are staff trained enough to continue their strategies in the classroom? Will school counselors be able to continue the program? Is there any alternative for keeping up the progress results we've seen from implementation? Dr. Saunders has already touched on this, so I don't know if there's anything else. As part of the contract, professional development was provided to staff, and the knowledge and that training that we've already received is ours. And so, we keep those in any documents produced, any behavior charts and so forth. They remain ours and can be used going forward. In FY24 budget, we have included additional student assistant specialists at MPA to specifically support behavior needs, plus the additional counselors and SROs and SSOs. And this takes us to our next steps. Do you want me to go? Okay. Dr. Saunders?
Thank you, Mr. Line. At this time, that is the update of the presentation and information. Happy to take any questions. This is an action item, and so we would need...
Now it's just the budget, or is it the rates too? Because previously we have adopted both the rates and the...
We added the rates in here to be one action with the budget and the rates. They are part of the budget process. We did not put them separate. As the update to the superintendent's proposed budget, we've now included them since we have them in there.
Perfect. Yes, and some of us who are more tenured have had the experience where we've done like every little piece. So thank you for the clarification. Does anyone have any remaining questions?
I do, actually, and maybe it's I'm not understanding or didn't get this part. For lunches, are we providing in the budget for all free lunches, again, continued for all the students in the budget?
So that is not, we are. Go ahead, you can answer that.
Yeah, that's the food services budget, 207.
Yeah, I saw that in the
And Greg,
nutrition.
Mr. Taylor, is ensuring that the meals are free to the students. So that is, he still gets revenue. But as we go forward, and I mentioned this in the first presentation, that we'll have to, not this year, but probably next year at this time, consider adding our local, obligating some of our local funds into the food services to start to cover those expenses. Right now, Mr. Taylor feels he has enough revenue to cover it, but he knows that revenue is decreasing, and next year we will probably need to budget some money to cover the shortfall. And if we choose to not charge.
What's the difference between providing for all and not?
Okay. So if next year at this time, in the FY25 budget, if we say we don't have money, we just don't have the funds to do that, we have to start charging.
Right.
Then we have to go back and charge students, and and then you have to manage that debt collection, because now those students will be able to pay. So that, some of it we'll have to pay anyway in the end.
Right.
So that's really the difference, is that we'll have to charge them and then start to manage that lunch debt again going forward, versus just saying, all right, well, let's just obligate some funds to negate this
Yeah.
and mitigate this going forward.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier. It
That's
just kind of came to me because I was just thinking about it.
Well, it's a good time.
Someone asked me a question last year, like, are we, and I was just wondering, because of the EBCS need, if there was a way to, if we wanted to make that a call as far as shifting that funds, if it was even enough to bring back the ECBS instead of
Lunch.
lunch, yeah.
Yeah, right now, we do not have any funds obligated to 207 to cover lunches, we have our state revenue and our federal revenue in there for Mr. Taylor, but we do not have any local funds going in there.
Okay.
And the state funds are obligated for the food service. I
Yes,
can't pull
okay,
them
you
in.
can't pull them, okay, yes.
And so are the federal funds, by the way.
Yeah, I just thought I'd check.
Yeah, oh, yeah, no, that's a good thought.
In previous years, we had to write off the bad debt from lunch. I'm assuming that we're so far removed from kids paying for lunch at this point that we're not carrying bad debt anymore.
Right. I may need to go back and revisit that from the yesteryears, but currently from this year or last year, no. Or since the
Right.
pandemic, right, there hasn't been.
Probably take more money for pay someone to collect it than it would be to
It was
collect
like, I think it was like $6,000
Yeah, it was
last time we had to
relative
write it
to the
off.
scope, yeah.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, and I'd have to look it up to see, but that sounds about right.
I was just curious going into it because
Yeah.
I know it'll start back up.
Yeah, and then Mr. Taylor felt, that would be the board decision, obviously, but, which challenge, if the funds are there, you may want to consider just keep paying for it. If not, then we'll have to charge, but then we'll have to start managing that again.
Right.
So the other thing I wanted to mention was I know that we're great. We've got a lot of counselors, and that's awesome. We have more than what the state recommends, and yes, they're not doing testing. However, I do want to caveat, they're still doing a lot more than just what counselors do. So even though we have a lot of them, that doesn't mean that they're just doing counselor work. And so I do want to make sure that that's clear to whoever's watching too. So they're super busy, and whenever I talk to a counselor, they're super busy doing other things than just counseling. They do counseling too, but it's everyone here wears many hats. So
I'll go down the rest of the line. Ellen, any more questions? Okay. You guys? All right. Yeah, I just wanted, since this is a passage, I wanted to be super sure. All right. So the question before us is the adoption of the proposed fiscal year 24 budget in the amount of $56,033,075. Are someone ready to make that motion?
It says roll call vote.
It is a roll call vote. We'll get to that. We have to do the motion first. Yep, nope, it's okay.
Okay. Motion to approve the superintendent's proposed fiscal year 2024 budget as presented. That's who did there, so
I'll
don't say
second.
the number.
Motion and a second. Mrs. Williams, indeed, this is a roll call vote, so you may do the rolling.
Mr. Paul Alexander,
Yes.
Miss Stacy Cyberling,
Yes.
Miss Ellen Slobodnik,
Yes.
Dr. Shante Jones.
Yes.
Miss Rachel Kirkland.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. And like my brain, I have 87 tabs open.
Yeah, that's what I was
Moving on to the new business, the school year 22-23 proposed calendar change.
Yay.
Yay. Good news.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. So I'm here tonight to propose several changes to the school year 22-23 calendar. While I think everyone thought maybe yesterday's snowflakes were an opportunity for some time off, it didn't quite pan out that way for everyone. So I'm sorry that we were not able to make that happen. So we have had a very fair weather winter, haven't we? And our teachers and our students and our community has been working hard to do all the good things and all the right things for everyone. So I come to you tonight with 3 changes to the school year calendar. The first change is to change March 31st, 2023 to a division close day. If you notice on the calendar as it exists today, actually March 30th is the last day of the third quarter. And then the Friday, the 31st, is right before our spring break. So this would add an additional day to spring break and to allow our staff and our students and our community and our families to enjoy that spring break, maybe a little extra weekend. That's the first change. The second is to move the last day of school, early dismissal for students, from June 9th, 2023 to June 8th, 2023. So moving it from the Friday to the Thursday, or from the Thursday to the Wednesday. No, from the Friday to the Thursday. Let's
Yep.
go that way. I'm going to get it right. And then to move the teacher workday, professional development day from June 12th, 2023 to June 9th. So that's from the Monday to the Friday, so that our staff and our students can be completed with the school year by that Friday and head out to summer. So these are recommended proposed changes that I'd like the board to consider for action this evening.
Any questions from the board?
No.
No.
I'd like to thank you for figuring out a way to acknowledge the mighty efforts and sacrifice of both our staff and students working in a school. I know how long the month of January, February, March is. That's it all at once. It's a 90-day month. And if without weather to break it up, it really takes a mental toll on all involved. So even just giving a day back will be a huge morale boost. Mr. Lanier, do you have any thoughts from the student perspective?
You okay with that, Miles?
Yes. Thank you for giving us that 31st off. Yeah, I had a lot of classmates talking about the fact that they found it very interesting that we were ending a quarter and then going right back to school the day before spring break. So thank you for proposing that change, because that'll give us a lot of much needed rest, because as Ms. Kirkland said, this 3 months is just a lot when there aren't a lot of 4-day weeks. And coming back from winter break in December and then November before that, like, it's a lot. So thank you again. That's all I really have to say.
All right. Thank you. All right. So can we go ahead and get a motion on this?
Make a motion to change March 31st to a division close day, move the last day of school, early dismissal for students from June 9th to June 8th, and move the teacher workday from June 12th to June 9th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing no opposition, that is another motion that carries. Our upcoming school board meeting, we're going to miss each other. We have our regular next school board meeting Monday, March 27th, 6:59 p.m. here in board chambers, and then almost a month later on April 24th, 6:59 p.m. board chambers. board member comments before we take a quick recess?
Yeah. So the days that we just went over we should designate them as sunshine days, and we should do an annual review, I think, every year around this time.
Absolutely.
For the no
Yeah.
snow days that we've had, we should designate them as sunshine days. Just a recommendation.
I believe I see some approval over there.
Are any other districts doing anything? Are we trendsetters here?
Please be trendsetters.
Give us
I'm not going to say that any other isn't. I know what we are doing, and I'm happy that our board recognizes the hard work of our students and our staff. So you never know what other things are happening across the state. So,
But we're better.
We're going to have sunshine days, and nobody else is going to have them.
Number one. All right. Any additional comments? I would just like to take a moment to thank everyone for all their hard work on the budget. This is always our most favorite time of the year. But truly, the amount of work that goes into it behind the scenes is impressive, ongoing for most of the year, and deeply, deeply appreciated. I'd like to thank the stakeholders that came out and shared their views on the budget. Clearly, we listened to you, asked questions that you raised as part of our process. And I have confidence that even without certain services, that every effort's going to be made to meet the important needs of supporting teachers and students in the classroom. I have a lot of faith in that. And seeing nothing else, unless anyone else has an additional comment.
Chair Kirkland, I just wanted to second, I appreciate the efforts to address the needs of the unfunded priorities based on the comments made from the public. So thank you for all of your hard work on that. I really do appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and take about a 5-minute break before we go into closed session.